For a tournament that hasn't thrown up too many turn-ups, it's certainly given us an almost endless amount to talk about. Whether it's sweeping statements, slightly too bold predictions, over-optimistic philosophizing about why your team may be heading in the next few years, or even the incredibly welcome, wow, you know what? I never used to watch women's rugby, but this tournament's been amazing. Don't know, lots of Geordies have been doing that, don't know why. And this weekend was no different, throwing up 4 quarterfinals that, whilst they all went broadly as expected, gave all 8 sides much to think about as they poured towards a quartet of very interesting futures. Or, in the case of France, change how we look back. Because in the years to come, I wonder whether we're going to reflect on the form of France's Caroline Drouin as the gold standard of French fly halves. She's been so unpredictable minute to minute, currently just one good game away from being dropped for a debutante scrum half who's never heard of a switch play. The French first 5 has been like a yo-yo dipped in yogurt all tournament, up, down and clogged to high heaven in a way that doesn't really work, yet is mesmeric to watch and also sweet to taste. I am not suggesting I've ever eaten a yo-yo or France fly half Caroline Drouin that did not come out as I intended it to. Anyway, this is a France side that needed to call on the full force of their barbaric talent and brutish power in order to overcome the one real surprise package of this tournament. Italy headed in as the, you know what, they could cause some damage team, and left, well, having caused some damage. Their forward pack has stood up, their back three being incredibly dangerous, and the midfield axis of Veronica Madia and Beatrice Rigoni is perfect, with one of the pair giving an assist on 5 of Italy's 8 tries across this competition. Madia has been maybe the 10 of the tournament for me so far, and a large part of that is how she gets the most out of the freakishly talented 12 alongside her. Because if you've got a player who can chuck passes like this, just, oh man, you'd be as focused on getting the most out of her as possible as well. Just as if you were an opponent, you'd probably focus pretty hard on marking her. So this is one great example of what Madia brings to the team. It's really subtle, it's really small, but it's kind of lovely. Japan have stacked their defence to mark Rigoni, 3 players directly opposite her to shut her down. So Madia, notice this, just crabs sideways a bit. She holds off giving the balls that she's intending to Rigoni until the second the defender stops still to watch Franco running this hard line, allowing her to hit Rigoni and for the centre to act on that indecision. Rigoni can find a weak shoulder as a result, allowing for a succession of offloads that eventually finds a space and puts them through for what eventually results here in a try. Throw in as well just glorious tiny little touches by Madia like this. Her body language doesn't say she's given the inside ball until she's given the inside ball. They're often so small, these touches by Madia, but she knows that that back three needs space and Rigoni only needs time. And the thing she's so good at is identifying how to give those players the time or the space that they need in that moment. She's properly world class at unlocking talent. And so France went into the game knowing they had to shut the pair, Madia and Rigoni, down if they were going to go any further in this competition. And that's the truly interesting thing, because whilst their attack has faltered as much as you'd expect from a team who overthrew their coach and dumped it all on the shoulders of Zizi Drouin, their defence has been universally excellent. I talked at great length about how they shut down England, but the following week they then faced almost the polar opposite threat in Fiji, and they didn't let them in once, nilling a side who caused the Red Roses proper problems, who are just phenomenal on attack. And heading into these quarters, they had another very different challenge, not looking to stop the power of England or the pace of Fiji, but creative midfield genius. However, Italy weren't the only one with geniuses in the centres, because the French centres, Gabrielle Vernier and Malé Philippon, are probably the number 1 and number 2 defensive centres in women's rugby worldwide, and they scarcely gave the Italian duo a peep. This is just vintage work. Philippon has eyes on Rigoni the entire time, knowing she's the key ball player in the Italian team, but when the play finally comes her way, Philippon stands off and opens a tiny gap. Rigoni's key skill is her pass, and Philippon baits her into running, and only into a hole she knows she can fill instantly, smashing Rigoni and ending the Italian momentum, leading to them knocking on a phase later. Or, here, the other centre runs exactly the opposite gambit. Italy have 3 players set for Rigoni to pass to, but Vernier floods the outside channel outside of her eye line to cut off all but the most ambitious pass, meaning the centre takes it in once again. The ball isn't getting beyond 12 because of the decision making of those French centres. Unlike England, stopping them didn't require a grand tactic, just endless split-second decisions made correctly, and Vernier and Philippon nailed it time after time. Italy might not have ever really looked like beating Canada, but they at least seemed capable of breaking down their defence. That just wasn't the case against France. Across the pool stage, the kicking game has been their secret underpinning Italy's game. It's been their kind of secondary, tertiary weapon that no one's quite noticing how good it is. But here, it became the primary weapon because it was the only option. The French D was simply relentless in its physicality. Italy found their backs without space and forwards battered backwards, the team averaging just 2.26 metres per carry and making just 220 metres with the ball in hand, which is remarkably low, right? The lowest in the history of the Rugby World Cup is 201. That's worryingly close. It feels like there's no aspect of the game that this French team can't contain, and that makes them facing New Zealand, a side who create more than Neil Buchanan reenacting the Old Testament, so exciting. We've got the best defensive team playing the best attacking team in the tournament this weekend. I am... That's the noise I make when I'm excited at that, and Geordie impressions, apparently. All of this allowed the French attack to finally start to look like they might be about to click at times-ish, if you don't think that actually scoring tries is important. France's tactics in attack have shifted slightly since the pool stage, but they're actually moving back towards what they were doing in the Six Nations or around that period before. This hat-trick try for Joanna Grise is a perfect showcase. Taking the ball on the wing, France immediately set into an interesting 1-3-2-1-1 shape with the backs outside. This gives them enormous width and allows for real continuity here. It's only once they get wide, stretching the backpedaling Italian defence, that they hit it up the middle, stretched that Italian team out. Workhorse Escudero makes a big crash, and we see the value then in this French system, where the players adopt the same shapes but vary the positions across the pitch. Quiro sliding the two out to play off 10 now, and then they explode off her shoulder, putting Undai into space. And as she's dragged down, the free group from earlier flooded up into support, but the freedom their system gives them allows them to drift apart and put Grizier away into space. It's impossible to tell if this is an element of the game plan France were holding back, something they were unable to get working in previous games as they were kind of adapting to new parts of the game plan under Dirac, or it's simply something they figured would work in Italy and Italy alone, or it may just be a coincidence because, it's bloody France, isn't it? It's impossible to really tell, but it all makes next week's semi-final even more tantalising because this French team are so capable of pulling moments like this. We've seen so many of them down the years, and now we're starting to see odd ones happen again, even if they do have a real problem in not finishing chances. We are still seeing things start to click on attack, just as they started to click for Drouin in that second half, because she was fantastic. There were beautiful touches such as this to put Boulard in for a score, but the real impact was her kicking game. It was a huge change from that first half and something that really let France stretch away, leaving Italy forced to only kick in return. It's an area of the game that she executes with real subtlety. She hides herself wonderfully here to free up the time to place a perfect touch finder, and this is just a gorgeous 50-22. Once again, giving herself the time to position herself perfectly, hitting it right before she hits the halfway line in order to find the sideline. Trapped in their own half suddenly by Drouin's kicking, chances for the Magicians of Forza time to pull exciting shit became few and far between. This could be particularly important because, for all their strengths, the kicking game seemed to be New Zealand's one real area of quiet. Almost suspicious. Quiet. Before this tournament began, Wayne Smith, the Black Ferns head coach, said he had a grand master plan he wanted to use in the semi-final and final of the 2007 Rugby World Cup when he was coaching the All Blacks that he never got the chance to do because some fella called Thierry Dusatois turned up and ruined the whole thing for him, and now he intends to use it with the Black Ferns in 2022. But when you glance at this New Zealand team running riot against every side they've played, you wouldn't think they were holding anything back, would you? Right? Well, let's look at this, right? 18 overall pool games means 36 team performances. And if you ranked those 36 performances by individual teams by the number of kicks from hand and amount of metres kicked, New Zealand would occupy the entire bottom three spaces for both lists. They barely kicked, and when they did not kick it very far at all. They were chips and grubbers. Part of this is because they know they don't need to. When you're eating up metres like this, when you're making so much ground up, why would you stick it in behind? But the other part of this, well, it does look as though the Kiwis aren't being coached to kick unless they absolutely have to. We saw that again in the quarterfinal. The Black Ferns are happy to run from absolutely anywhere. This, for instance, is just beautiful work on instinct, skill and identification of space against a Welsh team who were starting to wilt. But they did also have some organised loveliness too. This is a beautiful two-phase move. Ball comes off the top and sent to Hirini to crash up first phase, and while she gets good meterage, it's kind of irrelevant because the real goal is here. With the line out so recent, the Welsh forwards are still set in the wide channels, and New Zealand throw to what looks like it should be a simple two-pod crash-up job to Michaeli Tui, and as Talia John flies up to shut it down, a little sect of backs rounds the corner. New Zealand put 4 players in the face of Donna Rose, whilst making sure she's also aware of edge forward Bremner, and the tight head gets turned inside out. No idea where she's looking and left for dead by Portia Woodman. Jazz Joyce, who had a phenomenal defensive game at the back. Seriously, she was really impressive. Like, proper, if you want to learn how to defend line breaks as a fullback, look at how Jazz Joyce played this weekend. Gets to her, and Wales, typical of this team, scramble and reset and work really hard, really well, really quickly, even stopping Bremner on the next phase, but the phase after with further threats organising behind, it all proves too much. Amy Rule is able to smash over for the try that takes it beyond a contest. This, a very intricate pre-practice set play, targeting a tight head prop, would probably work wonders against France. So why have New Zealand spent it all on a Welsh side who they were already 19-0 up against? Well, because they're clearly holding back enough that they can afford to. If it's something Smith intended to use in 2007, it's not a modern forward shape. If it was a few trick plays or fancy moves, he probably wouldn't have felt they would only work in the later stages of a tournament. So that narrows it down to a game plan, a set of tactics. And if we look at what New Zealand are and aren't doing, it leaves us with only really two options, right? One is the kicking game, something New Zealand have neglected up until now, just as the men did in 2007, where they felt they could breeze past the pool stage opponents, then expect to get Argentina in the quarters, only for 2 straight upsets to occur. What the kicking game might look like, I've got no idea, but don't be too surprised they run slightly less against France when things get serious this Saturday. The other option is New Zealand doing an awful lot of pick and goes and tight carries around the ruck, and then looking, once they suck in defenders, to play wider. It might be that they're looking to switch that up, to do something entirely different off the first few phases. Instead of playing narrow to suck defenders in those first few phases, they might be looking to go wide far sooner and then play through the middle, similar to how I talked about France doing earlier in this very video that you're watching right now. I don't know. Those are the only two ideas I have. I'm not Wayne Smith. I can't tell you for certain, but I'm very interested to find out what it's going to be this Saturday. And before we move right on, I do want to take a moment to talk about Wales, because talking about the Wales women's team is maybe my favourite topic. If you ever see me in the street, please stop me and ask me to talk about Donna Rose. And also because even though that scoreline was ugly in the first half, it felt a bit like a proper coming-of-age moment in many ways. Where the game in the pool stage was extremely one-sided outside the scrum, Wales fronted up across the park in the first 40 and probably put in their best performance since that first half against Scotland. Caris Morgan-Williams was brilliant in the 13 channel, a constant pest and an incredibly adaptable defensive centre. One equally capable of floating to cover as shooting up to stop attacks. And instead of feeling like a team under the pump all game long, Wales seemed like a far more evenly matched side who made 4 defensive errors, and New Zealand scored on all 4 of them than they did in the pool stage, where it all felt a bit that's a technical term. And Wales, at this point, just don't have it in them to create those kind of breakthroughs that the Black Ferns were against sides like New Zealand. We saw it starting to happen in the Six Nations against teams like Scotland and Ireland, but it's going to take time to reach the point where they can open sides up enough to reach the last 4 in 2025, which has to be their goal. This team has come an incredibly long way. 18 months ago, they were losing by equivalent margins to this to teams not even qualifying for the World Cup. And they've shown now a huge ability to learn and improve on the issue areas. The main problem in the Six Nations, their kicking, has become a real strength, only highlighted by Flaky George's remarkable FU pick-me performance off the bench, cramming an entire World Cup's worth of drama into 20 minutes and hitting a 50-22 on her first touch of the tournament. However, that itself is kind of highlighting a problem. Having only grown a kicking game in the last year, Eleanor Snowsill's knack of knowing when and how to use it still is going to need a bit of work. If we look at the really great kicks she put in against Scotland, most of them were off first or second phase, pre-called and spotted in advance, possibly by the coaches before the game even. But in more dynamic situations, later in the game, far too many times, Wales have found themselves struggling for territory and still refusing to kick, even though they've now got a really strong kicking game. The second half against Australia was packed with those moments, where Wales kept the ball in hand despite no meters coming their way, often leading to turnovers, even leading to 3 points in one example. This is a failure of game management, but ultimately the fault lays not on Snowsill or Wilkins or Bevan and Lewis, but the WRU. Eleanor Snowsill always could have had as well-rounded an arsenal as she does now, but decades of neglect, negligence and active dismantling of this women's team meant she's only started to show her true potential now, aged 33. It could not be more important to the future of Welsh rugby at all levels across the entire sport and nation that the WRU continues and increases their investment in this team to ensure they're not just youngsters in the squad like Flaky George and Cecilia Tuipulotu, but the incredibly promising under-18s team who won every game they played this year, and even more importantly, the generation below them, the little girls who begged their parents to let them stay up at 4 a.m. and watch the heroes play, never face a situation like this and are able to come through and become the players they always had it in them to become at far earlier ages and live out entire careers as the players they always could have been. Anyway, stop me in the street if you want more of that. I can talk for hours. Hello, thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed that. I wanted to try and cover England as well, but I've just run out of time. There's only so much you can get through in England and Australia, and there's 4 quarterfinals, and it's a lot, and I've just been caught in the rain, hence my hair being wet. And also, there is one other quarterfinal, though, that we will get to, Canada's game.
Yes, so very soon you'll have a deep dive, or a deepish dive, a bit of a dive on Canada, the rugby team, and it's going to have a really weird narrator on it who I've never heard of.
Yeah, sounds like a loser. For the first time, after however long of this chap contributing to the channel, I have handed over primary control, so we'll see how that goes. If the video never comes out, it's because it was shit. So,
And even if it does go out,
that's up for you. Yeah, please let us know what you think of that. That should be up before Friday, before Saturday soon. So we'll see you very soon for more rugby.
Wales want to play. Callender just tries something different with a little chip kick ahead. Woodman doesn't collect. Wales want to play. Callender just tries something different with a little chip kick. Wales want to play. Callender just tries something different with a little chip kick. Wales want to play. Callender just tries something different with a little chip kick. Wales want to play. Callender just tries something different with a little chip kick.